you started looking into yourself, you grew a little bit, so you brought another partner with now it propelled you to another level.
It doesn't have anything to do with real estate, but it's more about being able to evaluate people's character and integrity. We have different skill sets, a little bit different emotional temperaments, and it just seems to work. So it's a slow process. Find people who are strong at things that you are not strong at or that you don't like to do, and find those complementary skill sets and then go from there.
Hello everyone and welcome back to The Path of Progress. I'm your host Alex Kononov, and today's guest has over 4 decades of real estate experience and has transitioned from helping clients buy and sell homes in Silicon Valley to helping investors build wealth through multifamily syndications. Joining me is Arn Cenedella, founder of Spark Investment Group and general partner in over 1,100 multifamily units, with more than 138 million in assets under management. He's also an LP in over 500 doors and brings a wealth of knowledge from both the commercial and residential sides of the business. Arn, welcome to the show.
Hey, Alex. Thank you for the warm introduction. Appreciate it. And looking forward to having a nice chat about real estate. Hopefully, we can provide your listeners some value and help them on their progress as real estate investors.
Absolutely, Arn. I'm excited for today's show. You've got over 40 years in real estate in general. Let's start at the beginning. How did you first get into industry?
Yeah, I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, kind of a typical middle income American kid. And of course, my parents said school's very important, do well at school, go to college, get a good education, get a good job, and so forth. And that's the path I was on. Ended up at grad school at University of Michigan. Got a master's degree in chemistry of all things, but I wanted to return to the Bay Area, and my father had opened up a residential brokerage business in Menlo Park, California, which is right next to Palo Alto, which is where Stanford is, just kind of north of what was to become Silicon Valley. We had a quick talk on the phone. 2-3 weeks later, I had packed up my car and drove back to California where I grew up, and got my real estate license and went to work for my father. And that's how it started. So there was no grand plan. There was an opportunity to return home, and made sense to me at the time. And that was back 1978. So we're here 2025, and I'm still doing real estate. So it's been a great journey. Real estate is excellent. It's been a great career. So yeah, happy to share my experiences.
You lived through so many cycles in real estate. And can I tell you about time about you being a realtor? So you've been a realtor for about 35 years, right?
Yeah, so I was a single family realtor. I showed people homes. We'd drive around, we'd look, they'd make offers, we'd buy homes, people would sell homes. So it was very much a traditional single family residential brokerage business. And when I started in 1978, the average prices may have been in Menlo Park, Palo Alto, maybe $200,000-$300,000 for a house. And actually back then you could actually buy houses as single family rentals. As of the time I left, average prices, this would have been 2014, average prices were probably $1.75, $2 million, $2.25 million. So basically over my 30-year career as a residential broker, home prices in the San Francisco Peninsula, Silicon Valley, probably 10x or 15x. So, I feel blessed to have worked in such a great market, very competitive, high prices, large commissions, and very competitive market. And to kind of be there as Santa Clara Valley, which used to be an agricultural hub when I was a young kid, 4 or 5 years old, to watch it morph into Silicon Valley was quite something. And the real estate story was kind of part of it.
Yeah, I love it. Have you bought your own real estate during the time, or you just been on the agent side?
Well, so interestingly enough, my father, it's interesting because I find many real estate brokers are not heavy real estate investors. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because your knowledge of the market is kind of an investor's competitive advantage. And as a realtor buying, selling single family homes, your market knowledge should probably be superior to the average person who's maybe working at Intel or Apple Computer, working 40, 50 hours a week. So not many realtors are actually big investors. And my father was kind of different. When I started working for him, one of the things he said to me was the real estate brokerage business is a great business to create income. But to create wealth and financial security and freedom, you really need to take that income, make capital, and use that capital to invest. And it's really the investing of the capital from your income that leads to kind of long-term wealth. And I think that's very applicable for a lot of employees in Silicon Valley. They're making really good money, but it's an expensive place to live. And to the degree you can put aside some of that income, live on less than you earn, that delta is now available for investment. And if you kind of put it to work for you consistently over time, it kind of mushrooms, snowballs, grows exponentially. So my father was a single family investor. And as I said, when I first got into the business, you could actually buy single family homes in the San Francisco Bay Area as rentals. That wasn't true basically after about the dot-com boom. Say around 2000, that was no longer true. But to start, we bought single family homes. And over time, I started to build a portfolio of single family homes, both in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was also fortunate to somehow stumble upon Austin, Texas about 2000. And I think most of your listeners understand what's happened in Austin with its economy and growth and so forth. So started investing in single family homes, managed the ones that were local, had a property manager take the ones that were in Austin, Texas.
I love it. I want to come back to the story that your dad started teaching you investing early, and he was the idea, right? It's a common saying, the shoemaker without shoes, right? And it's applicable to many different categories, industries, and especially in real estate as well. Like you said, well, not a lot of brokers actually invest in real estate themselves. I met super brokers who has 50 people in staff, and they transact super high luxury tickets houses, and still they don't invest in real estate. And it's really boggling me. People need to understand this principle from the early on and from starting investing. And I love how your family embedded this in your family roots and how to start and what to proceed in future. Do you push this on your kids? Did you try to teach them as well? And do you have any say? I know you talk a lot, you mentor from a lot of people with your experience. How do you describe this to your life?
Yeah, so I don't know that my sons have quite figured it out yet. We all kind of go through a maturing process, and I can be honest, then when I was in my mid to late 20s, I didn't always follow my father's advice, but as you get older, and I think as you become a father and you have more responsibility, some of those lessons sink in. It's more a slow drip process. My sons are still in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's very expensive there. They have not yet started their real estate career. Uh, Honestly, they're just trying to make ends meet and pay the rent. As you know, the San Francisco Bay Area now, very expensive place, not only to own, but to rent. But I think eventually they'll get the message and start investing. And I think you just get started and you can take small incremental steps and just keep kind of growing your knowledge, getting more experience, becoming a better investor over time. And I know Americans particularly, they want everything now and, it has to be tomorrow and there's this instant gratification. Real estate isn't really like that. It's more a 5, 10, 15-year program. But if you do it right over those 5, 10, 15 years, then you're almost certain to prosper from doing that. And so that's kind of the message that I give. We both understand people have very demanding jobs. They make very high incomes. They're paying high taxes. And so offering passive investing opportunities to kind of very busy people, not only with their career, but with their family, with their community. And so if you can provide them an avenue to invest in real estate that doesn't take a lot of their valuable time, I think we're doing a nice service for people. And I would say at its heart, most people understand owning real estate's a good thing. They see the price of their house go up, they see rent go up. Intuitively, it makes sense. It's a necessity. It's more and more expensive. So I think people understand investing in real estate is a good thing. And when I talk to people, I talk about diversification. So if somebody has a heavy stock portfolio, yeah, a lot of my investors are heavy into tech. I just talk to them about, hey, maybe take 5 to 10% of that nest egg and move it into real estate, do a little bit of diversification. And I think they get the message. I think what holds them back is either they don't have the time or the knowledge, or they just don't want to hassle with tenants and collecting the rents and repairs. So that's how I kind of approach people. In terms of mentoring, my father, of course, was my first mentor, great broker, excellent investor. He was born 1921. So he actually lived through the real depression. And somebody having that life experience understands things don't always go smoothly, that they're going to be rainy days. And so I think if you incorporate that into your investing philosophy, you can kind of minimize risk and protect on the downside, would still benefit on the upside.
Yes, I totally agree with you. We have different mindset, younger generation and older generation living through different experience, and the experience building on that. Some people got rid of stocks and they think, why invest in or crypto nowadays? Why invest in real estate when I can make 10, 20x overnight and be happy about it? But it usually doesn't happen that way. And usually there is some hiccups and the coins can crash and crypto and stocks can crash 70, 80%. Even this Beyond Burger stock, it was like super hot when like few years back, right? This alternative meat option. And what it is, like 90% down from it. And you think, okay, this is a legit company, something happened, but you never know. And sometimes it's like you said, diversification is the key. And back to you, to the kids and family and how to teach them. I think it's important what you said, slow drip. It's also like planting the seeds early, right? And someone needs different timelines, someone needs different experience to get to it. But when they get to it, they say, okay, I remember my dad and my family member or someone from my circle told me about this. Let me look into it. And I think it's important to plant those little seeds everywhere when you have opportunity. And this is how it grows.
Yeah, and I think a counselor once kind of told me oftentimes your children will maybe not acknowledge what they're hearing, but they are actually kind of getting it. So I think the planting the seed analogy is a good one. And I think, of course, also modeling kind of the behavior that you want to instill in others is important. And as I watched my dad build his portfolio, I could see his net worth building. And it's not so much all about money, but to the degree you're financially secure and financially free, now you have greater options, right? It's all about presenting options. We've talked about real estate brokers, high income, lots of sales, big staff. Well, if they stop selling houses, the income stops. And so the real goal is to keep income or make investments that create income that go without any of your efforts. And for me, I'm 70 years old now. I'm financially free. I probably don't need to earn any more money in my lifetime, but I enjoy what I do. And it's one of the expressions I have. There's a difference between having to work versus choosing to work, right? And so the real estate activities that I do add to the totality of my life. And I have experience, I have expertise, I still offer some value. And if I can help others kind of move along this same path, and my life is totally different than anyone else's, but through investing, you then have a wider array of options that each person can kind of follow their passions, whether it's, volunteering to teach kids to read or volunteering at the church or doing something else. To have that optionality in your life is really a blessing in my mind. And so that's what the financial really creates. It creates a life of options, not to mention less stress. I can remember as a young father buying a house, taking on a mortgage, trying to make a sale. Do I have the money to pay the mortgage next month? That can all be stressful. And when you get to a point where you no longer worry kind of about that day to day thing, it's really a blessing and your life kind of opens up.
Yes, 100%. This topic is extra important for me as I'm a young father with two little kids on the street, and I hope one day I can give them a proper example to build this financial freedom goal in their mindset so they can not be a slave of the society and be free and do express their life and their vision how they feel free.
And it doesn't really matter what they do, right? You want them to be happy, you want them to be content, and whatever form of professional endeavor they decide to take is great. As a father, I just want to see my sons happy and content with their life, productive, self-supporting. And after that, it's up to them to kind of do, whatever their dream is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be following in my path. This is the path I was on, but it doesn't have to be their path.
But it enabled you to do what you like. It just happened to be the same things that you like as real estate. Was it what enabled you to do what you like? So that was.
Well, funny how that works. So there's an expression kind of where the energy goes, attention flows. And I think you'll find, and this may not be true all the time, but I would say most people who are financially successful probably enjoy what they're doing. I think there's some kind of symbiotic relationship to that. If you enjoy it, you're better at it, you're more productive at it, you can motivate your team. So there is a connection between kind of passion and income. And of course, let's be honest, over 45 years in the industry, there were times I was ready to pull my hair out. But in general, it was a great career for me. So I think sometime by following your passions, you can kind of unlock the pathway to financial success. I think they kind of go together.
I think there's no path without obstacles, right? Have to get our experience one way or another. So there'll be wins and there'll be losses. But the good thing about it that from the losses we'll get the experience. So ultimately there's no loss in general speaking, but you still get something out of it. So it's not a loss percent.
Yes. And one of the ways I look at it, in the multifamily space, there are coaches, there are mentors, there are gurus, there are very successful syndicators. And until a couple years ago, the mantra was go big as soon as you can. And I just think I've always been more a fundamental step by step person. And if you do it that way, when you have your setbacks, and I've made mistakes as an investor, believe you me, but the mistakes were of a scale that I could recover and continue and learn, but I wasn't knocked out of the game. So I think it's just important kind of do it in a systematic way. So if there are a setback or two, they don't knock you out of the game. You pick yourself up and you recover. And so I'm a big believer in kind of systematic growth as a way to help one through those inevitable downturns and not totally lose kind of ambition and desire and confidence to keep on going that path. make the losses small, make the wins big, do it in a systematic way, and just kind of grow over time.
More in the space of real estate, me personally, I hear more and more saying slow is fast, especially in real estate. You go slower, but in the distance, you actually progress much bigger, much faster, because a lot of people who's trying to sprint on a short distance, maybe they get excited, they get a little partnership on this deal and this deal, but they spread themselves too thin that they limit their own growth to go to bigger units, to bigger projects.
Yep, I agree. Slow and steady will do it. That's how I've kind of approached it, and it served me well. You know, when the market is going gangbusters, it's a little bit easy to get carried away. And even me, after 46 years, I can get a little excited. And I have two partners that perhaps are a little more thoughtful and methodical than me, and so I can get excited about something and enthused. And, you know, I love real estate, and I see a property I like, you know, the energy goes up. But I associate myself with partners who look at it a little bit differently, provide a different perspective, maybe have a little bit of different emotional temperament. And so the balance works, because if I'm saying go, they're saying, hey, let's think about it. And just slowing down that process to allow a little bit more analysis and try to build some consensus has worked well for me, kind of knowing that I tend to lean towards saying yes. But if you have a team that's all leaning towards saying yes, you can say yes into a problem.
I think having a right partnership and team is a whole another subject, and we can talk
Yes.
about it for hours. And this is very
Yes.
important in real estate and networking and multifamily in general. And
Yes.
I love how we switched to mindset right away from the beginning. But let's come back to your journey. How did you shift from residential to multifamily?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in 2010, 2014, about 10 and a half years ago, Laura and I left our home in Silicon Valley, moved clear across country to Greenville, South Carolina. We loved our time in Silicon Valley, but we were ready for something different. And I was at the gym one day, and I was standing next to two young guys on the treadmill, and we got to talking. Well, what do you do? What do you do? And we were all in real estate, and one was a residential broker here in Greenville, and I actually bought a few houses for him when I moved here. And the other worked for a new home builder. So right about the time COVID hit, my friend who had worked as a new home builder had moved into multifamily syndication. And in March 2020, he called me up and he goes, well, Arn, what do you think's going to happen with rent collection due to COVID? And I said, Mario, I'm not sure. Talk to me in April and I'll let you know, because I'd already collected March rents. So we had to wait till April. But at the end of it, he gave me a podcast to listen to by a guy you may be familiar with, Neil Bawa, who's also from the Bay Area. And I listened to that, and kind of a light bulb went off. And that's kind of that phone call with Mario, listening to the podcast, kind of a light bulb went off. And shortly thereafter, I started transitioning kind of my business and my personal investments from single family to multifamily.
Love it. And I think it's important. You had those seeds in the past, right? The multifamily. You always heard people invest in multifamily. You were already talking about it. You were thinking about it. But the specific events kind of enlightened that switch for you. And then you were ready to make a move.
Yes, it was just the right time in my life. I'd done the single family, and I think, you know, one of my principles, and maybe Albert Einstein said something to this effect, as long as you're learning, you're not getting older, or a way to maintain some kind of level of youth is to keep interested, keep learning. And so it was at the right time in my career to kind of make a transition and do something a little bit newer, a little bit different.
So it's not that long of a time. 2020 that you completely transitioned to multifamily?
Yes, yes.
Wow. So what was your first roadblocks and challenges during this transition? I know it's a different space from residential to multifamily. It requires a bigger team, requires more knowledge on this space, even with your knowledge being in the industry for 45 years at that time. Still, it's a different kind of skill set, right?
Yeah, it's still residential and the type properties we do are your typical kind of garden style apartments. We kind of like the sub 100 unit space. So it wasn't like we went to 200 unit high rise condos in downtown Miami. It was a relatively smooth transition that way. And when I first got to Greenville, I did a lot of single family house flipping and working with investors to raise capital to do flips. And that went very well. And so one of my big roadblocks was I assumed my flip investors would just automatically follow me to multifamily investing. And I soon found out that that was an incorrect assumption because your fix and flip investor is different than your multifamily investor. Your fix and flip investor wants to put their capital out, maybe 6, 9, 12 months, get it back plus the profit. It's very short term. Put it in, specific deal, flip it, get the money back out. So it's a more short term type thing where the multifamily investing is long term. So one of my roadblocks was very few of my fix and flip investors moved to multifamily with me. Now, over my career in Silicon Valley, I don't know how many homes I sold. Could have been close to 1,000, say it's 750. I don't know. Over 30 years, it's not that many, 25 a year over 30 years is 750. I developed a fairly good database and I kind of built my business on referral. So that was a fairly fertile place to look for investors for multifamily. Had a pre-existing relationship with them. They knew me in the real estate space and so forth. And it took a little while to kind of plant the seed. And so I probably made the decision to go multifamily, say spring, summer 2020. We didn't close our first acquisition until May 2021. So basically about 4 years ago. So it took about a year, one, to find a property we wanted to buy, but two, kind of educate my database as to what syndication is, what's the advantage of multifamily. And I remember the first deal we found, it wasn't a big one, 43 units, $2.8 million. We raised about $1.5 million and it all went smoothly. But I could tell you when we signed the contract and went to work raising capital, we thought we could raise the capital, but we weren't sure because we had never done it before for a multifamily deal. Fortunately, it all went smoothly and that deal is going very well. So that was an interesting time to make the transition. And of course, we were right in the middle of COVID and people were afraid. They didn't know what was going to happen. The stock market was down, economy was rough. So it was an interesting time to make the transition, but it all worked out.
Yeah, it's definitely a little scary for people to invest in new assets, especially as they think the world is collapsing and we can't leave the house, we don't know what to do, everything is shaky, right? And it's a very uncertain time, let me put it this way. But you
Yes.
you made it through. So can you share a little numbers? Do you still have that property, by the way?
Yes, we still have the property.
Okay, can you share a little bit numbers about this property? What was your plan for your investors on that? What kind of split did you offer? What was the dynamics on this?
Yeah, so this was our first syndication deal. What we did was, and again, this is back 4 years
2021.
ago, so interest rates were a little lower. We offered our investors a 6% pref. And of course, to clarify for those who may not know what the term is, a preferred return is not guaranteed. Any investment involves some degree of risk. But what the pref means is the investors receive that minimum pref return, in this case 6%, before the general partner or the operators receive any share of the profits. So we actually started 6% pref, 80-20 split, 80% of the profit going to the limited partners, 20% to the general partner team. And I think that may have been up to about a 13 IRR. And then we switched it to maybe 75-25. And if we get above 15, I can't remember the numbers, then we probably go to 70-30. So the terms were fairly investor friendly. It was our first syndication out of the deal. We wanted to get off to a good start. 1906 build, but it was an affordable property, slab foundation, vinyl exterior, all one bedroom units, 620 square foot units in what I would consider to be kind of a C plus neighborhood. Average rent at the time we acquired the property was about $650. We're now up to basically about $1,000 a unit. So we've increased the rent about 50% in 4 or 5 years. And we still may be a little bit below market, but we've been successful in increasing rents. Relatively newer build, so we didn't have to spend gobs of money updating the HVAC and doing so. We did more like luxury vinyl plank, new kitchen countertops, new plumbing, light fixtures, remodeled the bath. The other big value add that we did was the units had been built with washer dryer hookups for stacked washer dryers, but the owner, the prior owner, didn't provide the stack washer dryer units to the residents. In my experience, I've seen tenants own side by side washer dryers, and they'll move from house to house and they'll move their washer dryer. I don't find many people buy a stack washer dryer in a rental. And these were $650 a month units. So to spend $1,200 for a stack washer dryer, that's a significant cost for a $650 a month resident. So one of the big value adds is we paid the $1,200 a unit, installed it, the hookups were all there, so we didn't have to do any plumbing, electric, or just hooking them up. And with that, we were able to get $1,500 a month bumps, because who wants to sit in a laundromat and do their laundry and feed the machines in the quarters? So we renovated the units, we improved the outside, built in a few gazebos with grilling stations, put in a pet park. So yeah, that one's going good. Best of all, rates were down at that time. We got a 7-year fixed loan at 3.86%, which now, if my math is correct, we still have another 3 years to go. So we've probably doubled the value of the asset, but there's really no reason to sell. One, the market isn't that great right now, and a new buyer would have to pay about 6% for debt. We've got 3.86. So we're just going to ride it out another couple years. Hopefully interest rates come down. And at that point, we'll decide, do we want to sell it or do we want to refi it and hold it long term?
I just want to a little bit rewind for our listeners. Guys who don't know what it is, syndication. Syndication is basically a way to purchase real estate by raising funds from outside investors. There is two group of people involved in the syndication, and Arn, correct me if I'm wrong here. The general partners is a sponsorship on the team. It means there's deal runners, asset managers, deal fund, whoever found the deal, whoever have investor relations. There's different roles in that bucket, but it's basically the sponsorship team that runs and controls the property and stabilizes and makes sure everything runs smoothly from the point then of purchase. And there's another bucket is a limited partner, and limited partner is an investor. It's a passive investor that invest money by specific terms that advised before by sponsorship. There is signed agreement, and property is bought usually under LLC. And this LLC, everyone has a little role there. So your investment is basically safe, is backed by the property and by the specific terms that advised. And when Arn mentioned about preferred return, it means the property generates some income, right, Arn? And when income is generated before anyone else gets paid, after all the expenses paid, of course, but the first one get on the line to get paid is the limited partnership team before the general partnership team get any fair share for their service. And after that, there's additional split. Like he mentioned, the split changing depends on the performance. It calls waterfall split, and when the sponsorship team performs well, the split changes. Depends how big of a return they get, and this is their contribution to the team. So they want to show their effort to the limited partners, and if they proceed, if they deliver what they promised, then they get a little bigger share.
Yeah, that's 100%. One or two things I would add is the sponsorship team, the operator, the general partner, all those terms are kind of used interchangeably. We are the ones who are signing on the loan. So we're signing our personal guarantee off into these loans. The limited partner investors have nothing to do with the loan. There's no obligation for repayment of the loan. So the sponsors are the ones who are responsible for repayment of the loan. So that's one advantage of being a limited partner. So just add that. But other than that, Alex had it down. The other thing I would say, the general partners are paid a small acquisition fee at the beginning of the deal. Typically, we charge usually 2% of the purchase price. 90 to 95% of our compensation only comes at the end of the deal. And as Alex was saying, is whatever profit is left over after paying all the investors back, paying their pref return, is then split. And so the nice thing about this from a limited partner perspective is the compensation for a general partner, my team, is directly tied to how profitable that deal is. If it's not a very profitable deal, our compensation is minimal. If it's a very profitable deal, we're very well compensated for that effort. Of course, the limited partner investor gets 70, 75, 80% of the profit. So the way the structure's set up, it's totally performance based. The general partner compensation is really a function of how well that deal goes. And so that should be comforting to the limited partner, knowing they get the first cut from the pref return. And then from there, the GP compensation is a function of how well the deal does. So the compensation's back end loaded. It's based on performance. If we don't perform, do a good job, our compensation is limited or minimal.
It's a very reasonably structured deal, I would say. And to our listeners who don't know what is acquisition fee, typical deal takes a lot of time to get to the closing, right? We going through finding deal. It's really hard to find the correct deals that's gonna pencil out. Then there is this due diligence phase. You have to find a loan guarantee. You have to find all the little moving pieces. You have to front money to go through the due diligence phase, to pay all the contractors, subcontractors, to go and check property, make sure there is no issues with it. And sometimes there's issues, you have to retrade this property to make sure you have this extra margin to fix those issues before getting to the closing table. And a lot of times you have to walk from the deal. Arn, can you mention how long it usually takes to get to the closing table, one deal?
Yeah, so our normal kind of schedule will take 90 days. Typically, we'll make an offer. We'll have a 30-day due diligence period. So that's when we do all our inspections. We have the decision to proceed or cancel the deal. During that 30-day period, we could probably get our earnest money deposit back. Then at the end of 30 days, our earnest money deposit goes hard. And what that means is if we then fail to complete the purchase, we lose the deposit and it goes to the seller. So 30-day due diligence. We usually schedule close 30 days after that, but we build in the right to extend close another 30 days. So the typical is kind of 90 days. And just to give you an idea, we're currently in contract on 96 units in the Greenville, South Carolina market. We have up an earnest money deposit of $112,000 is now hard. That's our capital that could be at risk. We paid contractors about $15,000 to do the inspections. We're going for a Fannie Mae loan. The Fannie Mae does their own inspections. Those were another $15,000, and that includes appraisal and what they call property condition assessment. It includes a phase one environmental. We also had to pay about $13,000 loan application fee to Arbor that's representing us before Fannie Mae. So the point being is, as general partners, we're investing our own capital. Our own capital is at risk. And sometimes we walk away from a deal and perhaps lose our earnest money deposit. We have to make that assessment. If the deal's not workable, we'd rather just lose our deposit than create a real problem. And so the acquisition fee kind of covers those expenses up front. So it's not a real profit center for the general partner. It more reimburses them for a lot of their costs and risk in doing the transaction. So this deal is about $11 million, which isn't a huge syndication deal, but I thought the listeners might want to kind of understand the level of investment that the general partner team does. We will use our 30-day extension because getting an agency loan takes time. And that 30-day extension we'll put another $56,000 in escrow. So we'll basically have about 170 in escrow and be out of pocket $30, $40, $50,000 for all these other things. We've always completed every deal that we've gone after, but that doesn't mean there won't be a case where maybe we won't be able to. I'm confident we'll get this one done, but being a general partner is not someone for faint of heart. And yes, we're compensated if we pull it all together. And as a limited partner investor with little or no liability, if we can return a good return for you with no effort on your part, provide the ability to diversify, I think it's a fair bargain. So we feel good about what we do.
I think it's important to mention is 3 months is only after you got under contract to the closing. But to find the deal sometimes take months too. You have to underwrite a lot of deals. You have to actually bid on a lot of deals to get them to the contract stage, and it's still not certain that you're gonna get there, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. These properties, we've had our eye on them for about 3 years, and they're in the suburb of Greenville. I live in downtown Greenville. All of our investments are in Greenville County. It's a county of about 500,000 people. BMW and Michelin are here. GE's here. It's a good market. We've actually kind of been after these properties for 2, 3 years now because we love the suburbs where they're located. And it was only basically because the existing ownership partnership decided to kind of dissolve that we were able to get to a price that made sense for us or our investors. So as Alex says, some of these deals take a long time. On these particular ones, literally, we've been after them for 3 years. And, every 6 months we might make them an offer. And then finally we got one.
So how did you find this deal originally? You said it's 3 years ago you started negotiating. Was it the broker listed at that time, or you just went direct to seller?
Yeah. Okay, so as you know, the commercial real estate market is a small world, right? People know each other. The brokers know the investors, know the property managers, know the debt brokers in this. So these assets are owned by another local investment group. And so I think when they first acquired them, they wanted to wholesale them to me. Okay, they got them under contract. They wanted to flip them to me for a nice profit. I wasn't willing to do it, so they ended up closing. And then, as you know, one thing interesting for your listeners, in the single family space, we have the multiple listing service. And basically 98% of all the listings are put on the multiple listing service. So the data for all of these houses for sale is readily available. I forget the tech term, but Zillow picks it up, Redfin picks it up, and they propagate it. Commercial real estate is much different. There's not really a central multiple listing service. More what you find is broker A has their listings, Broker B has their listings, broker C has their listings. So there's no one central place to find. So that's why you got to develop relationships with brokers. The other thing is these brokers are constantly contacting owners. Do you want to sell? And often an owner will go, yes, I'll sell if I get my price. And so then the brokers reach out to their buyer list and kind of do it. So it's really an interesting kind of thing. Is that on market or is it off market? A lot of times it's word of mouth and maybe not formally listed, but it's not truly off market either because all the brokers kind of know this seller's kind of out there shopping around for a deal. So over this period of time, I would say 2 or 3 other brokers brought it to me, and I'm working with the broker who bought it to me this time. And it just so happened that the timing was right to cut a deal. So the whole finding the asset and kind of navigating all this, it's an interesting process, and it's much different than it is in the single family home space.
And I think also very important to mention, you are true to your numbers. You're honest with yourself and you stick to your numbers, to your guns. And they keep coming to you, say, hey, listen, you want to buy this? You say, yeah, this price, I'll be interested. And they say no. And they told no many times. But then they knew that you're in the games. They knew that you're buying. So they kept approaching you. So you kept that relationship going with the brokers, on the market in general, as a player who's doing deals. And you just, again, have you changed your numbers during this time, or your number was the same pretty much all over?
Our number was pretty much the same all the time. Yeah, we kind of knew what we thought it was worth and the numbers we could make, the numbers we needed to kind of make it work. And, this is a common theme within the multifamily space now. The peak of the market may have been, let's call it Q3 of 2022. Maybe it wasn't really until early 2023 that we kind of realized the market had changed. Through 2023, 2024, most sellers kept their pricing expectations based on what it was in 21 and 22. And so there was no deal flow. I think I saw one stat that multifamily transaction volume fell 75% 2023, 2024 compared to what it was in 2021. I think the sellers are starting to become a little more reasonable. And many of them have loans coming due now because there was a lot of activity 2020, 2021. Typical commercial multifamily loans, 5 years. You can get longer, but a lot of those loans are coming due now, 2025, 2026. And it's not that these sellers are necessarily in a panic or in real distress. What it more is, maybe they now have a 4.5% mortgage on it and the property's doing okay, but their note's coming due and now they're faced with maybe paying 6%. And so maybe the numbers aren't quite as good. And so maybe instead of refining at 6, they say, hey, let's sell, we'll take some profit and let the new guy do it. So I think we are going to start to see volume increase. The one negative, I think, is interest rates haven't come down as most investors had hoped. And at this point, I'm not sure there's a lot of sentiment they're going to come down significantly anytime soon, which is okay too. I bought my first house 1980 and paid 11.75% for my mortgage. So in my mind, paying 6 for a mortgage isn't crazy. What was crazy was being able to get a mortgage at 3%. That was unusual. So we're now kind of back more to normal, which increases the importance of kind of operational ability. So to be a successful investor today, you really need to know how to professionally run these operations. They're $1 million businesses. And if you can reduce expenses 2 or 3%, if you can increase rent 2 or 3%, increase rent collection 2 or 3%, reduce vacancy 2 or 3%, all of these little adjustments can make a deal nicely profitable, even at the rates today. But it's really important to kind of eke out those savings every place you can, because when you add them up, they make a significant difference in the bottom line. So, very important for investors out there. Try to work with operators who kind of really have a track record of running a specific type of asset efficiently, because that will make the difference between a win, a tie, and a loss.
I think it's important to mention to our listeners why you're saying there's such a difference. You increase your income, you decrease your expenses. Why is it important? Because this is, guys, how you improve your net operating income, and this is how the commercial assets like this is evaluated. Everything over 5 units is considered as a business, as a commercial, and it's evaluated based on their net operating income. So you get your gross income with all the improvements, with all the laundry income, everything extras that you can get there, and you subtract your expenses and you get net operating income, which is divided by the cap rate in the area, and you get your evaluation. So the bigger delta, like Arn mentioned, is the most important thing. And I think I'll repeat here, your words is very important for listeners. Step one, you improve your physical and functional abilities of the property. You get your value add, you improve in laundries, you improve in something that you can improve your rental, even from visual perspective, so people would like to live there. Then you improve their living conditions and maybe some amenities on the property, so they want to move and stay there. Right now you have less turnover. And the next step, now you're looking at your deficiencies in your operational budget, and now you look, okay, what we can cut, what we can improve, and now we and net operating income even more. And now your value of your building grows because you're efficient, and people want to stay in this building and they want to continue rent. Less turnover, better type of tenants because they want to pay, they want to stay here, they want to live and bring their family here. And now you improve your operational part, and now this is a game basically.
Yeah, and just to put it in perspective for the listeners, let's say the typical cap rate across the United States right now might be 6%. In Dallas, it's probably under 5, but for the sake of argument, for the sake of discussion, let's say about 6, which is about what it is in Greenville, South Carolina, which is a pretty good market. If you increase your net operating income $10,000 a year, just $10,000 a year, you've added $167,000 of value. If you have a larger property and you increase your income $100,000 a year, you've now increased the value $1.67 million. So it's yes, and that's one of the reasons multifamily is so great. You have this ability to scale, which just kind of maximizes the profit. The other thing we really like is generally in apartment complexes, maybe you have 1, 2, 3 different floor plans. Maybe you have a 1-bedroom unit, maybe you have 2 different 2-bedroom units. You have 3 different floor plans. Once you remodel or renovate one of each of those floor plans, you now know exactly how much flooring and carpet you need. You know exactly what cabinets you need, what countertops, what's toilet, what sink, vanity, tub enclosure. And so you can kind of order those materials in bulk. Like what we do, we have a 38 unit building we bought in November. We don't buy material for one renovation. We buy them 10 at a time. And we have a little warehouse. We store them in the warehouse. We get a discount on the price. So when you have that ability to repeat, rinse and repeat, you know exactly what you need. You're not spending time running back and forth to Home Depot. You get a volume discount. The other thing that happens is your construction crews are now familiar with that unit and that floor plan. So they can, what I would say typically on our first unit turn, if it takes our crew 3 days to get it done, by the time they've done 1 or 2, it's now down to 2 days because they just learn how to do it. So with the multifamily, you can really kind of mass produce these unit turns And that is really one of the nice advantages about multifamily. You could think about owning 10 single family homes in your town. Each house is probably different. So if you remodel the kitchen in one, that isn't going to help you remodel the kitchen in the other because it's totally different. But with multifamily and apartments, you got a couple floor plans and you nail those, and then you just bulk order the material.
It's another way to earn a little bit more because you spend a little bit less. Now you have your economy of scale. You order in 10 water heaters, you order in 5 HVAC systems, and now you can save a little bit here. Not only about money, right, on those assets, but the time going to get those assets and get the things done. And the time is valuable in multifamily because you spend less than a week. Now you have extra week of income this year. And this is what matters. And sometimes the cycles of the time when the rental is going is also important before school season. Some people tend to move sooner, right, and more often before the school season, so they visit families, they can settle in that particular area. And that also helps with turnover and understanding the dynamics of your local market. And I think it's very important, Arn, to mention what also helped you to expand in my head, right? Because you focused on one specific area in Greenville, and now you have your teams there. Now you have your relationships with people, and helps you to simplify and automate the process as much as you can, right?
It's a big advantage, particularly if you work smaller properties. And we tend to do 30 to 50 unit properties. There's no way to buy a 30 unit building in Charlotte, North Carolina, another 30 unit building in Atlanta, 30 units in Jacksonville. That's not going to be efficient. It's not going to offer any economy of scale. But you buy them all in one location. You use the same HVAC contractor, same electrician, same landscaper. And I can also tell you, Greenville was hit with Helene back in October, really did a lot of damage up in North Carolina, in Asheville, about 60 miles from us. Greenville was hit, but relatively spared. The other great thing was my partner Brian and I, within 48 hours of the storm stopping, we were able to physically be on site at every one of our assets and determine what damage, if any, was done. And knock on wood, we had some trees come down, but no building damage. But we were able to get to our investors within 48 hours and say, hey, we've been to all of your assets, we've been to your investments, everything is fine, no major damage. And so being local, being able to get on site and report that to our investors, I think they appreciate it, because if they're living in San Francisco, California, and they see pictures of Helene, they're going to wonder, oh my gosh, is the building I invested in damaged? So being able to get on site quickly and evaluate things, I think, is another advantage to kind of having a specific market that one works.
Yeah, and I think for investors, you mentioned it's a different kind of mindset when they invest with someone who's not locally, but you are boots on the ground. So they have this mentality: if something goes wrong, you can be there physically. And now it's safer investing for them that you're physically there. You can override and oversee the process when it's needed. With your expertise, with your experience, it's definitely a big plus in this game.
And as your listeners know, in their neighborhoods and their communities, areas vary block by block, mile by mile, right? And within your community, there's some areas that are a little rough. On the other hand, some communities where you can tell things are turning around there. You can see the revitalization. And so being local and kind of understanding those micro locational differences is also really important. When you look on a map from 3,000 miles away, it could look like, oh yeah, this property, they're a mile apart, must be the same neighborhood, where in truth they could be two vastly different neighborhoods, two vastly different demographics. So the local knowledge helps there, kind of really analyzing your market block by block.
This is like insider knowledge. You have this insider knowledge, knowing what's going on exactly in that spot. And maybe some person from another state, they're like, oh, that all seems nice. I Google Maps, I drove there. but maybe they don't know there was gang activity the other day or the other week here, and you heard it on news, you maybe drove by and you saw some funny activity going on there, and you're like, okay, maybe it's not the right spot for me.
Correct.
It's crucial. Okay, you mentioned something very interesting, and I think it's very important to understand. Arn, why are you trying to focus on 30 to 50 units with persons your experience and financial means? Why not go bigger? Why do you want to focus still on the smaller scale and focus on that area, particularly in multifamily?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have two primary partners. One of them lives here in Greenville, where I live, and my other partner is another Bay Area expat who moved to the Carolinas, but he lives up in Raleigh, Durham, Research Triangle area of North Carolina. My other local partner here, Brian, owns Progressive Properties at Greenville. He manages maybe about 500 single family homes as a property manager in Greenville. So, as your listeners may know, as the buildings get bigger, as the multifamily gets bigger, often at 80 units, maybe 90, maybe 100, you start having on site leasing staff, on site maintenance staff. Brian's company isn't set up that way. So he's more a single family broker where his property managers meet people and show them property. So for his operation, he's in charge of the property management, the project management. He was a master plumber for 15 years before he became property manager, which he's now done for 15 years. So on his property management model is more suited to the smaller properties that don't require on-site staffing. The other reason we like it is we find it's easier to get control and improve and upgrade a smaller property more quickly than a larger property. And yes, it's not always true in that case, but in a 30 unit building, generally what we found, it'll take us 12 to 18 months to kind of go totally through it, renovate it. The tenancy often needs to be improved too as you're increasing rents. If you buy from a long-term owner, maybe their property management procedures aren't very professional, rents are low, repairs are not handled professionally. So we find it takes 12 to 18 months to go through a 30, 40 unit building. So we like to get in, get control, make the improvements, both physical, exterior, interior, and also improve the quality of our tenants. And we like to go in and be able to kind of get that mission accomplished. Now we've got an asset that's rents are at market, it's been renovated, it's running efficiently. It's not that it's on cruise control, but it now doesn't need quite the intensity of attention, and we're able to go on to the other one. The other thing I would say is in Greenville, average unit price could be anywhere from 100 a door, 100,000 a door to maybe 175 a door. And so 30 to 50 units tends to be in that $3 to $6 million range, which usually would require 1.5 to $3 million of capital raise. And that's kind of where we feel comfortable with our investor database, where we know if we bring them 2 or 3 deals a year at that level, we can raise the capital safely. So that's some of the reasons we like the smaller stuff. The other thing I would say is there's generally not as much competition. You're often maybe dealing with the mom and pop owner. And what I mean by that is if somebody owns a 300 unit apartment complex, I would almost guarantee you that person owns 3,000 units somewhere in the United States. It's rare that somebody just owns 300 units. So as you get up more in size, you're working with sellers that have a higher property value, perhaps more expensive. More of the big buyers are looking at those things. So for us, not competing at that level, we find the smaller units offer a little bit more ability to get attractive purchases. The 38 unit building we closed back in November 2024, we bought it from a second generation owner. Building was built in 1970. Rents probably hadn't been increased in 5 to 10 years. The property had never been improved, so it was a great blank slate for value add. And he owned it free and clear, so we were able to get owner financing. So I think you can find that kind of story more often in the smaller units than the larger. Not that there's anything wrong with the larger ones, but we kind of know what we do, and that's kind of where we want to play.
Just dropped a lot of information, and we have a lot unpacked here, Arn.
Yeah.
I'll have to stop you next time during this
Okay.
process.
Stop me anytime. Yeah.
Step number one, you already touched the subject of this particular property. For all listeners who doesn't know, owner financing, also known as seller financing, means that this is properties that you negotiate with the seller, that he will finance his own house to you. So basically, you don't need a bank to do that. You don't need any money. You just need to pay him some down payment, and you save a lot of money on the due diligence and so a lot of money on a financing part, because usually it's you have to pay the bank a couple points to finance this thing, and also appraisal fee. Maybe you don't need it because you already know about this area and about this property, but now you negotiate directly with the seller, and sometimes you can get a better rate and maybe on interest only payments, which save you some money for stabilization period, and then you can refinance this person out of it. It depends on the terms, right? So how did you find the deal, Arn?
This one was brought to us by a broker. And again, it's a relationship. It's the same broker that brought me my first deal, May of 2021. And I was a broker most of my life, and I only got paid when the sale closed. So I like to get paid. That might be a little strange, but I think most people like to get paid for their efforts. As a commercial investor, as a multifamily investor, when you actually close deals, your name starts going to the top of the list for the broker the next time the broker gets a deal, right? Because if they know I know Alex likes this type property, and I know he'll close on it, and Alex has closed on properties like this, that broker is going to bring the next similar deal to Alex because he knows it'll get closed and therefore paid. So by performing and actually closing deals, brokers get paid. They like that. They then move you up the priority list. So this was a property that really wasn't on market. The broker brought it to me first, and we did negotiate owner financing. We got 5% when the market rate was 6. And as Alex said, we got interest only, 3 years, 3-year note. So we figure it's going to be 18 to 24 months to go through the building. And it's rough. 70s, window AC units, nothing done. We're spending $20K a door to renovate them. We have 3 years to get that property ship shape, and then we'll refinance. So it was brought to it by a broker. He's invested with us as a limited partner. I've done a few joint venture deals with him. So you just develop these relationships. And the other thing I would say, what I always tell my brokers is, if you bring me a deal that I don't know about, I'll buy it through you and you'll get compensated. So sometimes buyers may want to try to go around the broker, theoretically save a commission. And even if they're able to do that, they've now destroyed the relationship with the broker, and the broker's never going to tell them about another property again. So for me, it's, hey, if a broker brings my investors and I a good investment, a one that we can make money in over time, I'm happy to have him make a commission. And the other thing that I'll do is when I sell that property, I'll go back to that broker and hire him to sell it for me. So you know, one hand washes the other. That's how you create relationships. And that's how you get opportunities first. And if you could get to a deal first, trust me, it's going to be a lot easier coming to terms with the seller than if you're going through best and final and there's 5, 10 buyers bidding on it.
Absolutely. I think as one you mentioned, nurturing that relationship with a broker is a key success for you. That's what made you, and you, because you came from brokerage yourself, so you know importance of it, and now you can relate and you understand how important it is to be a human in the end of the day. And if someone brought you a deal, just compensate them, just give them some value. They bring you value, just give the value back. It's a basic human principle for the relationships, right? But all right, I want to ask you. We mentioned seller financing. I personally closed 2 seller financing deals, 7 and 6 unit, also little commercial deals. It took me a lot of time to negotiate because you need to educate seller on this, right? For first deal, it took me 4 months, and second deal it took me 2 months to negotiate. But share us, how do you negotiate seller financing deal from your experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. So normally, okay, so a couple things. So typically, when you're going to negotiate owner finance, oftentimes it's with somebody who's owned the property for quite some time. And it works best when the seller owns the property free and clear. So if you have a free and clear property and you have a long-term owner, let's say on these 38 units, the average rent was maybe $500 a door. So the owner was getting about $19,000 a month in rent. And from that, he had to pay property taxes, insurance, maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't have a loan, so most of that money went into his pocket. But he was self-managing the property. He had to go collect the tenant. A lot of the rent probably get paid in cash. It was that kind of type property. So number one, his basis in the property was very low. Basically, he inherited it from his parents, and his parents probably paid $5 a door way, way long ago. So typically with these long-term owners, they have a relatively low basis. So when they sell, there's going to be a fair profit. And so one thing you always bump into is, oh, I'd like to sell, but I don't want to pay capital gains. So one way you help educate the seller is to indicate, hey, if you finance this sale for me, we're going to be able, or you're going to be able to spread out paying taxes on the profit over a period of time. So this deal, we paid about $2.2 million. If we had paid him cash, he probably would have had a $2.2 million capital gain he had to pay, which he would have had to give $400,000 or $500,000 to the government. So owner finance, you spread the capital gain over time. So that's one way to get their attention. The other way to kind of get it to them is, let me add up. I think the note on we got is 1.67. We're paying them 5%. 12 divide. Okay, so the other selling point is, hey, if you get owner finance, you're going to get a monthly income from us, and you're not going to have to do anything with it. So the numbers there, we're paying him about $7 a month. So he was collecting $19,000 in rent, but he had to work to do that, and he had expenses coming out of the $19,000 a month. So maybe his net to him might have been 11, but he still had to deal with the property and so forth. Here, owner finance. Go ahead.
But you also gave him a down payment.
Oh yeah,
right?
We gave him a down payment.
So
I think $7.
He got a lump sum.
Yes.
So he got a lump sum money right from the start. He get a monthly payments without a headache, and also he's a first note on the property. There is no bank. He's a first person. So the moment you stop paying, he can take over the property. He can foreclose on you because you don't perform on your note. And this is, guys, a game here, right? And correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
It's a safety net, and that's how you sell this property to seller financing, because it's ultimately the safest investment for them. It's secured by the properties they really know, and they know the value is there.
Yeah, the best thing that would happen for that guy would be for us not to pay him to take the property back. Meanwhile, he's still got our $700,000 and he can go sell it again. So that's a very good point. First loan position, there's very little risk. So it's kind of a win-win. And so you just have to kind of educate them. But I think for long-term owners that own property free and clear, owner financing is a good way to sell. And also, I would say we probably paid a little bit more for the property because we got attractive financing. And so that's also a way maybe to give the seller his price, but then you get the terms that make it work for you, right? So there's a little give and take there.
Yeah. So you had a problem, you need to sell it, but it was such a distressed asset and you needed to spend a lot of money on this asset. And on top of that, you paying him down payment and you spending money on the property. So worst case scenario, you don't perform. He already gets the down payment, he gets monthly payment, and he gets all the improvements that he already did to the property. So it's a win-win-win for both of the parties, and I think it's important. So tell me a little bit more. How did you negotiate with this particular seller? Did you have to go through the broker, or you tried to take over the conversation to tell him, hey, listen, I need to speak face to face with this seller and explain it?
Yeah, I let the broker handle it. The broker had known the seller for many, many years. And so the broker pretty much handled the negotiations. And I think, that is one of the rules the broker plays. It's good to sometimes have an interface between the two parties. So in this case, the broker kind of negotiated it. We made an offer. He wanted a little more. We kind of said, well, we'll give you your price if you own or finance. But it was all through the broker.
And this is important to have a power broker, someone who's actually experienced and knowledgeable and has been long enough to understand this, because not a lot of broker knows what seller financing, surprisingly enough. Even in my experience, the 7 units that I bought seller financing, the broker told me no way he's gonna take this deal. It's don't even bother. And I have to, through emails, talk directly to the owner and explain him, big email explaining him his pros and cons of a seller financing deal. And it took us a few months, but we actually got it done. But again, building your team around yourself and knowledgeable brokers, this is very important.
Yes.
So Arn, moving forward to nowadays, how big is your portfolio? What is your operation look like nowadays?
Well, general partner in about 1,100 units, but many of them are in a supporting role where I'm not kind of the lead sponsor. So I have limited day-to-day responsibilities for that. Of that 1,100, I would say my team at Spark has about 400 units, all in Greenville. Those are the ones where we're the lead sponsor and take the lead on the day-to-day operations. I have a VA in the Philippines and I have 2 partners, no employees. And so it's relatively lean and, we'll just keep doing what we do.
I love it. And it begs a question. How do you find the right partner? You mentioned multiple times it's important to have the right partners that contributes to your skill asset. You have a property manager, you have another partner who's handling other parts of your investment. What is the secret sauce here?
Yeah, well, one, it just takes time. So I think be slow to enter into partnership with people. Hopefully, you develop enough a relationship over time that you have a sense of who these people are. So with Brian, I knew Brian probably about 8 years. I actually bought a duplex off him back, I think, 2015, and that's how we first met. And at that time, I was still managing my own rentals here that I had in Greenville. And over time, we developed a friendship. I then finally got smart enough to turn the property management over to him, which I should have done 5 years before, and therefore had some firsthand experience with him as a property manager. And then when I got onto the multifamily, his initial reaction was, I'm a single family guy. I manage single family. I have single family rentals. Why do I need to go to multifamily? And so I just kept talking to him about it. As I saw deals, I'd say, hey, Brian, come on, let's go over and look at this building. Maybe on about the 4th or 5th one, we finally found one we both liked. And that was the first acquisition we did. So with him, knew him professionally, developed a friendship. He then managed my properties and we kind of developed a relationship. My other partner, Dan, I usually go to the Best Ever conference put on by Joe Fairless. It's usually March or April. Typically, lately, it's been in Salt Lake City, one of the best multifamily syndication conferences. So before the conference, they have what these call these mini masterminds, little weekly Zoom meetings with groups of 5 or 10 people. And I met my other partner, Dan, back 2021 at one of these mini masterminds. And we had the connection. We both lived in San Francisco Bay Area. We both moved to the Carolinas. And he was a very successful investor throughout his career. And he lives about 4 hours away. And we developed a friendship. We were kind of in an LP group together. And at one point, he said, "Hey, I want to come down, see what's going on in Greenville." And showed him what we had going on. He started to invest with us as an LP. And I knew he kind of wanted to leave his corporate CFO job. And he was in a position financially to do that. So he invested with us 2 or 3 years. And Brian and I are real estate guys. We can handle the numbers, but it's not our forte. And as we started doing more deals, the workload on the underwriting, the finance, the accounting became more. And eventually we brought Dan in as a general partner. So now we're equal 1/3 partners. He handles all the numbers. I kind of hunt the deals. Brian finds the deals. And so that's how I found my two partners. So I think it's get out in the space, meet people, don't be too much of a rush to jump in, start slow, maybe try 1 or 2 deals with somebody. And if you see you're a fit, then maybe you could do something more formal. I think it's important that you have similar investment philosophies. We're kind of long-term buy and hold investors, not that another approach isn't equally valid. It's just kind of what we do, and we all kind of agree. And then just emotionally, we get along. So we have different skill sets, a little bit different emotional temperaments, and it just seems to work. So it's a slow process. Find people who are strong at things that you don't are not strong at or that you don't like to do, and find those complementary skill sets and then go from there.
I think what's important also was in your journey that you started it from somewhere. You started looking at yourself, then you engaged one partner, you grew a little bit, and you understand that you need help. You understand that you lack in the skill set is not your best skill to do accountant part and do more with finance. And you need help to grow more quickly and more organically. So you brought another partner with complementing skill set, and now it propelled you to another level. I absolutely love it. Yeah. Okay, Arn, I have last few questions for you. Quick hits, lightning round. So whatever comes to your mind first, please let us know.
Okay.
So one book or resource that shaped your investment mindset.
I would say the book that I started in is the best ever syndication book by Joe Fairless. It's a great overview of the syndication business. And it's also good for LPs to read just to get an idea of what syndication is. So that might be my number one book for people who want to kind of look at multifamily syndication.
Love it. Most important trait a new investor should develop.
I would say the most important trait doesn't have anything to do with real estate, but it's more about being able to evaluate people's character and integrity. And you do that using your life experience, because as you partner and invest with people, that's really the most critical thing. So I would say trust your judgment, trust your instinct, and choose your partners wisely. The real estate stuff can take care of itself.
I actually think this is the most important thing in real estate is your networking and your relationships. Without this, you can't progress. And like in your own story, you needed the partners to move to another level, to grow this business and not to lose your mind with accounting and with management. Now you had complementing sales. So
correct.
Networking, guys. Again, networking. One thing you wish you knew earlier in your investing journey.
Yeah, I probably wished I had moved to commercial real estate sooner. Early on in my residential career, I took all the CCIM coursework, and that's a great place to actually learn commercial real estate investing. And I was toying with moving into the commercial space. but I was a new dad and I felt responsibility. And so I made the decision to stick with the residential. I was doing well at it. I knew it. I was a young father. And so I made the decision to stick. Not that I regret it, but in retrospect, if I'd made the jump to commercial sooner, I'm maybe a little more suited for that. So I may have liked to gone from single family to multi and commercial a little sooner than I did. I'm a little slow, but eventually I get it. Only took me 35, 40 years.
Slow is fast.
Slow
And your
is
way is slower,
fast.
even faster, because you still got what you wanted to get, right?
Yes,
Still
I got
it.
there. Yes. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, Arn, final question for you. If someone wants to connect with you or learn more about Spark Investment Group, where's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, I'm very active on social media, either under Arn Cenedella or Spark Investment Group, primarily Facebook and LinkedIn. Website is investwithspark.com and reach out and happy to have a conversation.
We will leave your information in comment section, maybe on the screen too. Arn, really appreciate you being here. Your decades of experience and your shift from an agent to investor, and a great example of how long-term vision and taking action and also building long-lasting partnerships can lead to real financial freedom. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. A real pleasure. And I look forward to continuing to build our relationship.
Absolutely. Pleasure's mine. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, keep moving forward.